So, namaste everyone. Good evening and welcome to this evening's very not just interesting but much needed conversation with Dr. Ananda Balayogi Bhavnani, because I think this is a time when our sense of balance also is being really tested. So, I'm really looking forward to this very important conversation. So, those of you who are here and listening, please say hi in the comment section and please enter your questions as well. So this way we can make it as interactive as possible, and we look forward to hearing your comments. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shailaja Menon, and I've been a yoga practitioner and teacher for over 20 years now. I began my yoga journey in Coimbatore in India with integral yoga, and I continued it here in Malaysia with my teacher Manoj Kaimal. Along the way, I set up my own yoga studio, Mat and Beyond Yoga Studio. And a couple of years ago, in 2018, I became a published author with my book Yoga Shakti. I began these conversations during the beginning of the lockdown to kind of use this as a platform to share authentic teachings of yoga. Because in this age of intense physical focus, it somehow tends to get lost. And yoga is seen more like an exercise. So I know that there are a lot of wonderful yoga teachers, and somehow the universe manifested them in my life as well. And so we have Dr. Ananda with us today. So I would just like to add that all our conversations are available both on our FB pages as well as on YouTube channels. So do like and subscribe to our YouTube channels. Yeah, so to introduce Dr. Ananda, though I think by now most of you should be knowing him. Let me just say on a personal note that I came across Dr. Ananda through the wonderful talks that he used to give every morning on Facebook, where he generously shared the teachings of yoga from his heart in a very open manner. So, going through the official introduction, Yogacharya Dr. Ananda Balayogi Bhavnani is director of the Center for Yoga Therapy Education and Research and professor of yoga therapy at the Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth, Pondicherry. He is also chairman of the International Center for Yoga Education and Research at Ananda Ashram, Pondicherry, India, and Yoganjali Natyalayam, the premier institute of yoga, Carnatic music, and Bharatnatyam in Pondicherry. He is the son and successor of the internationally acclaimed yoga team, Yoga Maharishi Dr. Swami Geetananda Giri Guru Maharaj and Yoga Charini Ammaji Srimati Meenakshi Devi Bhavnani. A fellow of the Indian Academy of Yoga, he has authored 19 DVDs and 24 books on yoga, as well as published nearly 300 papers, compilations, and abstracts on yoga and yoga research in national and international journals. He has been invited abroad frequently for talks, public events, workshops, and retreats, and been a major presenter at yoga conferences in the UK, USA, Italy, Czech Republic, South Africa, Germany, Switzerland, Malaysia, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. A recognized PhD guide for yoga therapy, he was recognized as an IAYT certified yoga therapist by the International Association of Yoga Therapists USA in 2016. It is notable that he is the first Indian to receive this honor. I'm actually just skipping through some of his very noted and distinguished achievements because I'm so eager to get to our conversation. So you have to forgive me, Dr. Ananda. Yeah, but I think there's still a lot that I'm going to say. So he's currently a member of numerous expert committees of the Ministry of Ayush, including the National Board for Promotion of Yoga and Naturopathy, Scientific Advisory Committee and Standing Finance Committees of CCRYN, Technical Committee of the Yoga Certification Board, Expert Committees for Celebration of International Yoga Day and Yoga and Diabetes. He's also consultant resource person for the WHO Collaborative Center in Traditional Medicine Yoga at MDNIY New Delhi and EC member and director publications of the Indian Yoga Association. In addition, this is my favorite part. He is also a classical Indian vocalist, percussionist, music composer, and choreographer of Indian classical dance. And in addition, I have to say this also, it's a great pleasure I add that he was earlier this month honored with the Tirumular Award for 2020 by the Patanjali College of Yoga and Research Center in acknowledgement of his service to the cause of traditional yoga worldwide. So we are very honored, Dr. Ananda, to have you with us today. And let's begin with a prayer.
It's a pleasure to be here, Shailaja. And as you mentioned Tirumular, I will start with a prayer by Tirumular where he invokes Lord Ganesha in the Tirumandaram, the 3000 verse Tamil scripture.
Wonderful.
Om ஐந்து கரத்தனை ஆணை முகத்தனை எந்தின் நிலம் பிறை போலும் மீதினை நந்தி மகந்தனை ஞான கொழுந்தினை பொந்தியில் வைத்தடி போற்றுகின்றோமே. பொந்தியில் வைத்தடி போற்றுகின்றோமே. பொந்தியில் வைத்தடி போற்றுகின்றோமே. ஓம் கணபதயே நமः. ஓம் கணபதயே நமः. ஓம் கணபதயே நமः. ஓம் ஸ்ரீ குருப்யோ நமः. ஹரி ஓம்.
That was so beautiful and so fitting. I mean, I don't think you knew that I was going to, talk about your Tirumular award, right? But it came out so spontaneously.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So before I go into the questions, just acknowledging the people who have showed up here. Really happy to see I think so many people have become regulars now. Mr. Soundarajan sir, and then there's, my cousin Prakash, Mini Padmam, Lakshmi, my cousin from Singapore, Susan Falcon. So many familiar names. Dr. Balaji.
Don't forget Kaustubh, who's already there.
Okay.
Yeah. He's already there.
I think. So Kaustubh is going to be asking us questions and entertaining us as well. Yeah, he's already got a question. Okay. So really welcome all of you, and wonderful to have you here. And really, it's because of your participation that these talks are carrying on, and your interest as well. So let me just get right to it. Today has actually been a very disturbing day for a lot of people. I saw even Dr. Balaji had posted about he was so sad about SPB's passing. So balance has become such a crucial aspect of our lives, and I think the world is going through a never before seen and turbulent time. So how do we define balance, and the importance of balance in our minds, bodies, and lives in these COVID times when we are being assaulted by devastating news of loss on an almost everyday basis, right? So just today we're all reeling from the sad news of our most favorite singer. So a yogic perspective to control ourselves and to find our balance.
Today is quite a day because though for the last few days I have been anticipating the passing away of SPB. As I got the news, he was admitted in our sister concern, the MGM hospital in Chennai. So it is the same as our hospital, but it's the Chennai branch, the corporate branch. So we were getting updates, and the news was not good. But still, the moment it hit me was this afternoon, when suddenly, the beautiful compositions he has given us. Amazing compositions. I remember as a child, one of the first memories was of the Lingashtakam, where, in those days, the gramophone records and his Vishwanatha Ashtakam, Bilva Ashtakam, the Lingashtakam would be played everywhere. And then I think one of the most iconic movies, Shankarabharanam, in which for someone who was not trained in classical music, we had beautiful compositions. Om Karanadalu Santana Mauganame Shankarabharanamo and Ragam Tanam Pallavi. And then the most iconic, which is my heartfelt one, is Shankara.
Yeah,
and
beautiful.
Beautiful,
So beautiful.
Just the whole
The
body
feeling, vibrates.
And we are now hearing so many tragic losses every moment.
Correct.
And it's as if every day you are like, what's the bad news going to be today? And that is the challenge we have as a human being, because good news we welcome because it makes us feel good. We have endorphins, enkephalins, serotonin, melatonin. But then the bad news pushes us into a state of either depression or panic. And I tell you this panic that occurs, the depression that occurs, is something that we are all struggling with. So more than ever, the state of balance that yoga can enable us to attain, maintain, and regain. I'm using 3 words: attain, maintain, and regain. That is what we need more than ever right now.
Correct.
And what is the state of balance? People think balance is something that you get balanced and for the rest of your life you are going to live happily ever after. Like fairy tales where they say you get married and then you live happily ever after. In old Indian movies, you always had that last scene was people getting married. They say Shubham. Shubham would be. And I'm like, that's the whole story. And the whole epic starts after that. And the imbalances, and the challenges that come every moment of 24-hour living with someone. Okay. So we are constantly having this challenge. So we think I am going to get to that point where I'm balanced and then I don't have to worry about anything. Now that is an hallucination. That is not a possibility at all. That is a pipe dream. That is not the reality at all. Because as a human being, imbalance is part and parcel of our nature. Imbalance is part and parcel of our nature as a human being. And we are constantly attempting to find balance. And that is actually what is happening again and again and again. It's like that seesaw. And this is why balance for me is a dynamic state. It is a dynamic state that one is constantly working on. You never attain it totally because the parameters keep changing. It is like you think you've just got there and you find a bigger challenge to meet you. And I remember as a kid, when I was learning swimming with one of my father's Italian students, what he did was he was in our swimming pool and he would say, Ananda, try to come and catch me. So he would stand and I thought he's just a few feet apart from us and I would start swimming and he kept moving back. Now I didn't realize what he was doing. So I'm swimming to get to him and he kept on moving. The target post kept changing and I kept learning. I think the same with balance in life. It is a target post that is constantly changing, and that is why we need to keep on working. So balance for me is a dynamic state which we are constantly striving to attain. We have to strive, otherwise we are not going to survive.
Yeah, I think that was very well said. I mean, especially about balance being this dynamic state. I think it's so true that, there's no such thing as just getting it and then just holding on to it and the rest of our life we remain balanced. And it's something that we're constantly working on. So like everything else, I guess it's a process of trying to move to that state of balance. So I have many interesting comments. So I have Kaustubh who says, love is blind and marriage opens our eyes. I guess that's in response to your marriage comment. And I have Dr. Balaji who says COVID-19 really makes imbalance in all aspects. It is true. I guess it's a very challenging time. And we really have to strive hard to kind of find our balance and regain our balance. So you have compliments on your singing as well. Somebody says, Pooja. Pooja says, Dr. Ananda Balayogi, you sing so well. So can we explore balance through different perspectives of the different yogic scriptures? So I am very bravely putting Bhagavad Gita in that because I have heard from you many times saying that, Bhagavad Gita is a yoga shastra. So I'm including that in the list of the scriptures that, deal with, yoga. So the Bhagavad Gita, the sutras, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika. So just what is their perspective on balance? Can you share? You can start with the Gita.
Yeah, the Bhagavad Gita for me is a yoga shastra. The Bhagavad Gita gives us a very beautiful concept which is called samatvam. This concept of samatvam is actually given as a definition of yoga by Yogeshwar Krishna, where he tells us that in success and failure, siddhya asiddhayo samabhutva. In siddhya, siddhi means to attain success, Asiddhi means to fail. So he says, in success and failure, to maintain equanimity, that samatvam yoga uchyate. Siddhya asiddhayo samabhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. And I think this is such a beautiful concept because the whole verse itself, yogastha kulkarmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya asiddhayo samabhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. So, yogastha kulkarmani sangam. Whatever you are doing, do it in the spirit of yoga, because success and failure, whatever they may be, equanimity is what yoga is all about. And for me, Rudyard Kipling, he has given a beautiful poem to his son where he says, if, it's titled if you can treat the twin impositors of fame and failure, success and failure, twin imposters, if you can treat them the same, you are a man, my son. That is how it comes, that whole poem comes. And this is the same message of the Bhagavad Gita, that success should not go to your head and failure also should not go to your heart. Because success often goes to the head and failure goes to the heart, which is why people get dizzy-headed in success and then they do something stupid. And people get disheartened when they fail and do something stupid. In both cases, we lose the balance between head and heart. Head and heart have to be balanced. So when you are in success, remember the failures. And when you are in failure, remember the success. In the positive, see the negative. In the negative, see the positive. And in that, you find that equanimity. So the Bhagavad Gita has given a very, very beautiful concept. And the whole concept of the Bhagavad Gita, again, is based on something similar to Patanjali Maharishi. And when Maharishi Patanjali and Krishna say the same thing, I don't need anybody else's references. Those two guys are the best references in yoga tradition. Krishna and Maharishi Patanjali. And what do they both tell you? That Raga Dvesha, you have the dvandvas, the dualities. And the most important dvandvas are Raga and Dvesha, the likes and the dislikes.
Correct.
Maharishi Patanjali tells us, Sukhanu Shayi Ragaha, that which gives you pleasure and hence you are pulled towards it is Raga. That which gives you pain, Dukkhanu Shayi Dveshaha, because of painful suffering, you run away from it, that is Dvesha. Okay, so you have Raga, you have Dvesha. These are the two kleshas. And what happens is that we need to find a balance between them, because both the Raga, the attachment, and the Dvesha, the repulsion, are pulling you off balance, because balance always lies in the middle. The golden mean of Buddhism, the golden middle path of Taoism, all cultures have had that golden mean. And if you look at a seesaw, the balance is always in the center. This extreme doesn't have balance, that extreme doesn't have balance. Balance lies in the middle. And that is why Krishna tells us, Raga Dvesha Vimuktaistu Vishayan Indrayascharan. When you can go beyond Raga and Dvesha. Same thing Patanjali has said, Raga Dvesha.
Correct.
Raga Dvesha Vimuktaistu, you go beyond. Vishayan Indrayascharan. You are not attached to the objects of the senses anymore. Atma Vashye Vidayatma. When you are self-satisfied, self-contented, Prasada Madhigachati, you have tranquility of mind, you are in that beautiful sense of balance. I think this is very important because people always want only the good things that give them pleasure. They're afraid of things that give them pain. But pain and pleasure, both the centers of your brain are part of your limbic system and both are important. You need to have pain to understand pleasure. You need to have pleasure to understand pain. But don't get stuck with either extreme. Find that middle path where in pain you find pleasure and in pleasure you find pain. And you realize you need to transcend them. Same thing, Hatha Yoga. The Hatha Yoga is based on Ha, Ta. The Ha is the solar energy, the positive ions, the positive flux, the masculine energy, the sun, the Surya, the Pingala. Whereas the Ta is the lunar energy, It is the feminine, the negative flux, the anions, and it is the ida. And you don't want either to be ha or ta. You want to have a balance between them. That is why Hatha Yoga is the science of physically balancing the equal and opposite energies that are part and parcel of our existence. The Ha and the Ta are part of us. How can we balance these energies? That is what the Hatha Yoga is all about. Be it asana, pranayama, kriya, mudra, bandha, all of it is based on finding a state of balance, which is the Ha, Ta.
Beautifully said. Very, very nicely said. And so I just, before I go to the next question, I think we really have to answer Kaustub's question. It's the second time it's coming on. So if yoga helps bring about emotional balance, why are so many yogis emotionally imbalanced? So I guess that's a question for us as well.
I think the answer lies in your question, Kaustub. You have said, why are so many yogis emotionally imbalanced? Because they are not yogis. Because as long as you are imbalanced, you are not a yogi. You may be doing yoga, you may have bought a yoga mat, but you are not a yogi unless you have balance. And that is why Krishna tells Arjuna, tapasvibhyo adhiko yogi jnanibhyo abhimadodikaha karmabhyas chadigo yogi tasmad yogi bhavarjunaha. O Arjuna, become a yogi who is beyond the tapasvi, beyond the one who does karma, and beyond the one who has jnana. Be a yogi. Now what people think today, they go to a shop, buy a yoga mat, and they say, hey yogi, look at me. And today I saw someone, it says, ask the yogi. I'm like, seriously?
Is gangster yogi coming out?
Yeah, a bit of gangster yogi, because recently I was offered, someone said, we want to give you the title of Maha Yogi. And I said, I don't call myself a yogi in the first place. How will I accept a title Maha Yogi? So yoga and a yogi. The yogi to me is one who is in a state of balance and someone who is constantly readjusting the internal mechanisms through vairagya, viveka, swadhyaya. Through these internal mechanisms is constantly finding balance in every moment of their life. Now, I must tell you, there is nobody who's perfect. So we are all imbalanced basically. And we are striving for balance. But once we say the word yogi, it means someone who is emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually balanced. And I think what has happened is we expect ordinary yoga teachers to be yogis. Now they are a yoga teacher, they are not yet a yogi. And so we hold them to the expectations of what we expect from a yogi. Now another point. Most people's yoga practice is only on the mat. Now balance is not only on the mat, balance has to be in your life. And unless yoga becomes 24 hours of your life, every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for every day of your life and every night of your life, until that happens, it's not yoga. It's yoga on the mat, is yoga on the mat. And that is why when they come off the mat, they stop being in that state of yoga that they had on the mat. So in the yoga class, they all look so peaceful. They are in bliss. They get off the mat and then they come back to the normal animal nature.
Imbalanced state.
I think this is a big issue here. And that is why, again, this craze, all of us want to be liked. All of us want to be liked. And the moment you find an unlike on social media, unlike you find someone criticizing you on social media, it throws you off. The moment somebody says you are not as good as you think, or rather, who do you think you are? I get that all the time. Okay, I get comments like
really?
He's mad. Yeah, I get comments like he's mad. In fact,
oh my God,
there's a beautiful version of me singing Bo Shambho, the song, and someone wrote a comment on it. Looks like he's gone mad and lost his senses.
Oh my God.
I said, thank you for that. I said, yes, I've gone mad with joy for the great music. And I've lost myself into the music. So, if you understand criticism is part of your growth, and as Sachin Tendulkar said, make those stones that people throw at you, use them as your stepping stones to your success. That guy is a yogi because of that attitude. So yes, yogis should be balanced, but all yoga teachers are not yogis. And just because you are doing a few pranayamas and asanas, you are a work in progress. What I like to say is, we are all potential yogis. We are yogis in the progress. We are potential candidates for Kaivalya in progress. But along the way, we are not yet there. And this is why my mother gives a statement. She says, 99 times down, 100 times up. That is what
Very
balance
beautiful.
is about. People think that you should not fall down. We will all fall down. We are humans. Every one of us who is human makes a mistake. We lose our balance. But the test of yoga is, how soon do you regain your balance? The person who is walking the path of yoga, they should learn to regain the balance as early as possible. You will lose it. Nothing wrong. Don't feel bad about it. Don't be dejected about it. Don't condemn yourself. But remember, get back to that state of balance as early as possible. Tamil சொல்லுவாங்க, தடிக்கு விழுந்தாலும் மீசையில மண்ணு ஒட்டாம வரணும். If you fall down, come up without sand on your mustache. I think, get back as early as possible. As early and as skillfully as possible, regain your balance.
Well said. So I really think I just want to add there also. I think we just use words loosely. Yeah. So I think yogi is again a word that is used very loosely, and like even asana practice, like any kind of shape that we make with our body, we make it an asana practice, where actually the context of asana is so different. So I think we just use words loosely, and I think as serious, at least yoga practitioners, we should try to make an attempt to be more careful about the words that we choose. And I really like
Kaustubh has continued that question by saying Lord Krishna at one point becomes angry with Arjuna, losing his emotional balance. So does it mean he is not a yogi? See, Krishna is God in human form. Now, once you are born in human form, you are going to have human frailties, whether you like it or not. Now, as long as he is Mahavishnu in Vaikunta, he is perfect. But the moment he comes down as Krishna on earth, the imperfections are part and parcel of being there. And again, Krishna losing balance is not because he loses balance, but as a teaching tool for Arjuna. Krishna loses balance or appears to lose balance to teach Arjuna. So I would say that here it is using emotions as a teaching tool. Because many people used to find with my father, he used to express anger as a teaching tool. And so they told me, your father was an angry man. I said, no, my father was not an angry man, but he used anger as a tool to teach people who would not learn through any other way. And so Krishna may have had to use it. So for me, Krishna is Yogeshwar, but because you are in human form, you have to put up with a few things. It's like Krishna had to die. Why should God die? Well, because he was in human form, he had to die as a human to go back to being a god. So once you have a body, you're going to have backache. Once you have a mind, you're going to have headaches and mind aches. Once you have a heart, you're going to have heartbreaks.
The first time I'm hearing the mind aches.
It just came out.
Nice one, that one. So many questions here, but I have many questions as well. So I'm just going to hold on to taking other people's questions. Yeah. So when it comes to pranayama practices, can we explain the concept of balance? Because this is so powerful, right? That's why I want to get into it, right? How pranayama helps to balance the energies. So can you just go over that?
Yeah. See, there are two things. When we talk about pranayama and balance, two things are happening. One is the fact that the right nostril has a certain energy flow. The left nostril has another energy flow. So the right nostril, which is the termination of the Pingala Nadi, is called Surya Nadi. And the left, which is the termination of Ida Nadi, is called the Chandra Nadi. Surya, Chandra, Ha, Ta, Loma, Viloma, Prana, Apana, all these opposites. So whenever we are doing alternate nostril breathing, which is why alternate nostril breathing is one of the best ways to balance your nervous system physically, mentally, emotionally, and potentially spiritually also. I would say the alternate nostril breathing is one of the key aspects that induces a beautiful sense of harmonious balance within us. Now, even before that, the imbalance is primarily because of emotions which are part of the limbic system. And the limbic system, especially the amygdala, is where these emotions keep coming in and running in circle. Limbic system, limbus means a circle. And they keep on going round and round, and he said that, she said that, they did that, how dare they do that, and you become a mess. Like the Sudarshan Chakra going faster and faster, you go faster and faster, and that whirlpool, that tornado just pulls you away. Now this limbic system, what it does is the moment the limbic system becomes overactive, the upper part of your brain called the cerebral cortex, it shuts down. Because the limbic system has been around longer than the neocortex. It's the new kid on the block. The big bully is the limbic system who's been around longer, more powerful, knows all the shortcuts. The poor cortex is the new kid in school who's trying to be a good boy. Okay? The limbic system
So well
is
said.
the bully who will do anything to get you. Now,
I remember this.
yeah, this is how I think, so that we never forget it.
Yeah,
Now, if
amazing.
the limbic system becomes overactive, in Tamil we say, Athirakaranukku buddhi mattu. When your emotions go haywire like anger, the buddhi, the intellectual capacity of choice, discernment, knowing right or wrong, flies out the window, and you become an emotional wreck, which is the imbalance that the world is facing today. I'll give you an example. There was a pilot in Delhi, and this guy was driving around a 25 lakh car. And he had got this car a few days ago, was driving it, and a motorcyclist happened to, at the signal, scratch his new car. Scratch, not bump into it, scratch it. This guy got out, got into a fight with him, got back into the car, and ran over and killed that.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Okay?
It's
Now just
terrible.
imagine, this guy is a pilot who is having hundreds of people in the plane,
People.
and he has to have that. But when that emotionality, my new car, 25 lakh car got scratched by that idiot, I'm going to kill him, and the whole cortex shut down. Okay? Now what do we do? Whenever these emotions run haywire, your breathing is also going to be haywire, because the emotions and the mind and the breath, they are all interconnected.
Connected.
When you become emotional, your breath goes into what is called a chitta vikshepa, and antaraya chitta vikshepa, swasha praswasa, irregular breathing. Now what is happening? Your brainstem in the back of your head is controlling the breathing. It is also the old guy. It is the companion of the bully. The second bully is the brainstem. Simple thing, all you have to do is you have to start consciously deciding to breathe in and out, slow and deep. Nothing else. No complicated practice. When you are emotionally upset, just say, okay, breathe out. Then breathe out. And a few rounds of deep breathing, and suddenly what happens? You have brought the cortex back into the equation. Because to breathe slow and deep, you have to use your cortex. Suddenly you are using the rational, logical, common sense part of you, and suddenly the emotional part of you has to come under control. And it is at that moment you use that anger as a tool. And as Kaustubh is reminding me, Tendulkar winning against Australia in the Sharjah Storm, Gandhiji's anger, he brought that up in his last conversation. Gandhiji's anger in South Africa. Now, if Gandhi had got angry and punched that ticket collector in his nose we would not have had freedom. If Sachin Tendulkar had got angry and lost his head and become out, we would not have had that match. But both of those great people, what did they do? They brought the cortex into play. They said, you have irritated me. I am going to bring that in, use that energy, and start using my upper part of my brain to do the right thing. Gandhi used the anger as the energy to do the right thing. Tendulkar used the anger, the emotionality to play the best match. This is the difference between what he did and what most of us do. As a cricketer in school, I remember so many times we would wantedly irritate the opposite batsman. We would stand in the slips and we would start doing the sledging, which Australians do a lot. And this guy would get so mad, he would run out of the, area he's batting to hit the ball, and he'll get stumped out or he'll get caught. And we used to use it because the moment you irritate somebody and they get caught up in the emotion, they will do the wrong thing. But why did Sachin Tendulkar or Gandhi or anybody who uses that emotion? I think this is the key here, that the emotion is not bad, how you utilize it. Because if you get caught up in the emotion, you are a slave to the emotion, and the emotion then becomes the determiner of your destiny. But when you start to use your cortex, you are using the power of the emotion, but you are channelizing it, you become the master of your destiny. So whether you will be a victim of your emotions or whether you will be a master of them, the cortex, and slow deep breathing, suddenly the cortex comes into play. The second thing, research work at NIMHANS has shown Om chanting. Just you have to chant Om. And suddenly, all your emotions fall flat. The cortical control comes in, and suddenly you can see what needs to be done, what choice needs to be made. This is where suddenly the transformation occurs. This is why the power of prayer, because all our mantras, when you chant the mantra, you're afraid somebody is going to die, something's going to happen. What do? Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandham Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanat Mrityor Mokshiyamamritat. Om. The moment I start chanting, my cortex has come into play. The emotions are being subdued. And this is why chanting, deep breathing, slow deep breathing, alternate nostril breathing, breathing where you use the sound like the Brahmari. It is said through Brahmari, you attain a state of blissfulness. These are practical things you can do. And if you cannot do anything else, just say, whenever you are going to respond, what happens is we get anger and we say, I'm going to do this. What we always say is, okay, fine. Before that, take in a deep breath, count to the 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Breathe out. And now go and do what you want to do. In that moment where you have slowed down the breath, taken time, the upper part of your brain has come into play, and most probably you will not do something which is stupid. You will do something which is sensible and logical.
So thank you so much. I will never forget that bully and the new kid on the block. I think it's the first time I'm hearing this explained I think attractively, where you remember all this. So that was really, really interesting. So just a lot of people messaging. So I can't resist saying hello to Dr. Meena because she gave me a nice compliment. So yeah, so a lot of questions, but I'm just going to go back to my questions. Sorry, guys, just wait a while. So there's also, when you talk about Narishodhana, right, it's the left and right hemispheres of the brain. So, can you just talk a little bit about that, about how, balance between both the hemispheres of the brain is so important for us?
Yeah. You see, the fact that we have two brains, right and left, is part and parcel of our toolkit to find balance. And this is a reflection of the duality that exists in the universe. Purusha, Prakriti, day, night, hot, cold, which are called Dvandva. And ultimately, the benefit of asana practice or the state of asana is to go beyond the Dvandva, Dvandva Anabhigata. That is actually where it goes.
Yeah.
But when we are talking about the right and left brain, the right side of my body is governed by the left brain, left side of my body by the right brain. And the left brain is the brain which is quantitative analysis. It is the logic, calculation. It is constantly trying to understand things in a logical framework. It's more typically, at the risk of sounding a bit gender biased, it is the male type of thinking where they're always like, how much will I make? What type of position will I get in the job? Will I build a house and buy a new car? It's a bit more left brain. The right brain is the qualitative part, which is like, how can I make things more beautiful? And this is more a feminine trait, to make things more beautiful, to bring them into a state of refinement. Basically, I would say, again, at the risk of being a bit gender biased, for a man, it doesn't matter what the dosa looks like as long as they're going to eat it. Whereas for a woman, the dosa should be in a beautiful shape, served in a nice way, otherwise they are not satisfied. And this is part of the two brains, quality and quantity. So quantity is the left, quality is the right, which says, if I'm going to do it, I should do it well. If I do it, it should be done to the best way I can do it. And that is where music, the arts, the fine-tuning, all the beautiful, vivid imagination, creativity, it is very, very beautiful in the right brain. And I like to say that the left brain, for me, is Lakshmi. They say Lakshmi Kadaksham. Money is there, prosperity is there, things are there. Left brain is Lakshmi. So L for L. Lakshmi. I always teach the kids Lakshmi brain, Lakshmi brain, Lakshmi brain.
Yeah, I've heard you say that. I really like that.
This is the Saraswati brain, which is all creativity, art, music, dance, all the quality. So I ask the kids, let's tap Lakshmi brain, Saraswati brain, Lakshmi brain, Lakshmi, Saraswati, Saraswati, Lakshmi.
A great way to remember.
And suddenly what happens is that you are becoming aware of both of these type of aspects. Okay, it is amazing actually. Now, every time, see, all the sensation on the right side goes to the left, all the sensation on the left goes to the right, all the commands from the left brain to the right, right brain to the left. So sensory inputs and motor outputs are crisscrossed. Their crisscrossing is at the ajna. That is where the crisscross occurs. Now what happens? Whenever you do asana practice on the right side, you are working with the left brain. Whenever you do the asana practice on the left side, you are working with the right brain. And that is why if an asana can be done right and left, you must do both. Because people have a tendency, they say, oh, my right side is easier, so they keep on doing one side.
Correct.
It becomes lopsided development.
Correct.
Ideally, if something can be done on both sides, you must try to do it. This is the goal. And it is easier with the pranayama because close the left nostril, breathe in the right. I'm working on the left brain. Close the right nostril with the thumb. Now I'm breathing in the left nostril, right brain. So just by 5 minutes of this, I can work on the opposite side of the brain. So when I need to have qualitative analysis, say I'm going to go a meeting and I have to do a presentation of a lot of technical details, my left brain should be active at that time. Say I'm going to go on stage and be engrossed in my musical, I need the right brain at that time. You can time yourself accordingly. If you feel that you're going to be very stressed, left nostril breathing, you feel very dull, you don't have the energy to get up and do what you need, right nostril breathing. And what you are doing is finding a balance. Now, it is very important because commonly what we say is when you are in your left brain, there's nothing right about it. Okay, so when you are in your left brain, there's nothing right about it.
That's a
And
nice
if
one
you're
also.
only in your right brain, there's nothing left. And you have these creative geniuses like Mahakavi Bharatiyar or Tulsidas or Kabir Das, whose right brain was so active, they had no food to eat, they had no clothes to give the family, they had no house because they were totally right brain dominant.
Right brain.
And then you have all these modern business people who have so much of left brain, there's no quality at all in their life. It's money, 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 things, 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 things. And they forget that people are to be loved and materials are to be used. And people start loving materials and using people. And that is the left brain. What we need is a balance. Now, the problem is if you are 50-50, I often say then 50-50 you do nothing because you're caught in the middle. So I like to say it should be 51-49. So I like to say 49-50-51 so that you are balanced, yet you are dynamically moving ahead. So for me, it is so important. Balance, but dynamic balance. You are not, see, a stone is also balanced. You don't want to be a stone. You don't want to just stay there. The pudicha vacha pullaya, we say. You take that pullaya and put it, they will sit there until you move it. Adhisthana, how you do. Until that time, the pullaya will be sitting there. Pudicha vacha pullaya pola they say. Sitting like a stone all the time. You don't want to have that balance. That is a tamasika balance. You want a rajasika and a sattvika balance where you are able to be balanced, yet you are active. You are not balanced and passive. You are balanced but active. That is the state of yoga that we are working towards.
Very beautifully said. I've got a lot of comments on that. There's Sharada who says that she will never forget her Lakshmi or Saraswati sides of the brain. I think you've really made an impact with all these terms. And I think it's going to be very hard for people to forget that. So that's really a great thing from this conversation. And Rajan also says, a good friend of mine, he says on the left side, nothing is right. So he liked that bit. Yeah, so wonderful. So Shanti says, hi Shanti. So we'll just go over one. I'm just going to do one last question and then we're going to take all the questions from the audience. Yeah. So I really am very fascinated with the chakras. So just wondering how we can apply. Is there any particular chakra that is responsible for balance? Like if you want to visualize in your meditation practice, if you want to, keep your mind focused on anything.
For me, balance is all about the ajna. Okay. Now, each chakra you could say, because Mooladhara gives you the stability of balance, Swadhisthana gives you the fluidity of balance, Manipura gives you the dynamism of balance, Anahata gives you the flow of balance like the wind, Vishuddha, you find that balance which is out there in ether. But then ultimately for me, the Ajna chakra, it is the center where the whole balance mechanism lies. And physiologically speaking, it is the seat of the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the center of balance in human beings, physiological balance, which we call homeostasis. Homeostasis is physiological balance that whether you are sitting or standing, turning right, turning left, getting up, sitting down, eating, not eating, your hypothalamus is constantly trying to keep your body systems in balance. So the hypothalamus is responsible for both your sympathetic, parasympathetic balance. It is responsible for the normal balanced activity of all your endocrine systems. It is responsible for how much you eat or how much you don't eat, how much you drink, how much you don't drink, and even part and parcel of your sleep-wake cycle. Everything is part of it. And that is why for me, the hypothalamus, which is the physical correlate of the Ajna chakra. It is not the Ajna chakra. It is the physical correlate because it is part of the Annamaya Kosha. Chakras are Pranamaya Kosha up to the Anandamaya Kosha. So the physical correlate is the hypothalamus. And to me, the Ajna, that is why in so many yogic practices, we focus on this Ajna. Because the Ajna is where you are transcending the five senses. The five senses are linked to the lower five chakras. Smell to the Muladhara, taste to the Swadhisthana, sight to the Manipura, touch to the Anahata, and communication, hearing to the Vishuddha. These are all the sensory experiences that are always pulling us towards what we like and pushing us away from what we don't like. Remember Raga Dvesha? The lower five centers are constantly active with this. But suddenly you come up here, and when you come to the Ajna, there is no right or left. You are in the middle. You are finding a balance between the right and the left. And as Kaustubh says, Netti Adi, Netti Adi, as they say, you are
I think Dr. Ananda is just frozen. The screen is just frozen for a bit. Just hold on, guys. So anyway, just waiting for Dr. Ananda to get back to the screen. Internet change over. Yeah, so he'll probably come back on. Just hold on a few seconds, guys. Yeah, okay, he's back.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just lost my internet connection
Yes,
because
yes.
the universe was a bit scared. It says this guy is giving out too many secrets today, so shut him
No,
down.
but no, you were in the flow. You were talking about the Nettier D. I think you want to
You know that Netti Adi. When we talk about Netti Adi, what do we mean? We are focusing on this Agya. And this is why in Indian culture, always the different religious marks were placed at this point. It may have been the Shaivite, it may have the Vaishnavite, and the Kumkum is placed, the Bindu is placed, the Bindi is placed. And I'll never forget, my father had a pet monkey. We had a lot of monkeys, including me. I was his best monkey. Huh? Yeah, Kaustubh, your comment froze me. Seriously. He and I were running matter about getting back at each other when we are on interviews. Yeah, but anyway, that's fine. My father had a monkey, and one monkey we called it Anu, short for Anuman actually. And this monkey, whenever he would come in my father's class and sit on my father's shoulder, there are photos with my father with three monkeys on his head, shoulders, and laps. They would sit there while he was teaching his class to all the students. But with Hanu, what my father would do, Hanu would sit and my father would put his finger in the middle of the forehead and Hanu would go. And my father would say, he's saying Shiva, 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 Shiva.
Oh my God.
And in fact, my father would say, he would put his hand and immediately he would do it. It was an amazing reflex. I haven't seen it with others. It was an amazing experience. You know, this place is such an important point, the Bhrumadhya. If you look at the Bhagavad Gita again, you will find mention of the Nasagra and the Bhrumadhya. And Indian culture has given great importance to the tip of the nose and the midpoint between the eyebrows as a focal point for concentration, contemplation, and meditation. So this to me, I would say Ajna is where the balance is, that beautiful balance between right and left, and the right hemisphere, the left hemisphere being balanced, which is why you find the representation here. We chant a mantra. The Gayatri mantra for this is the Hamsa Gayatri. Om Hamsa Hamsaya Vidmahe Parama Hamsaya Dhimahi Tanno Hamsa Prachodayate Om. The Hamsa Gayatri is the Gayatri mantra for this area, because the swan with its two wings is supposed to be able to find a balance between the right and the left and have the discernment, the viveka. This is where you have the power of viveka. This is where the power of the buddhi, This is where the power of Icha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Jnana Shakti, they all come. So yes, if you ask me which chakra, Ajna Chakra for me is the center that I need to focus for balance, physically, all the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. For balance, yes, Ajna Chakra.
Okay, wonderful. So, I mean, I think it's really been a wonderful conversation, and I'm just going to stop.
One more point. In the depiction of Ajna, the chakra depiction, classically the Ardhanarishwara Shiva is depicted at the Ajna. And what is Ardhanarishwara Shiva? Half man, half woman. And remember, the left half of Shiva, that is why we say Vamapaga, he has given the left half to Parvati. The right half of the body is Shiva, the left half is Parvati, and in the brains it's reversed. Left brain is Shiva, right brain is Parvati. And that is why Ardhanarishwara is the classical cultural symbol of finding that same balance.
So beautiful, really beautiful. I mean, I'm sure everybody here is completely taken to a completely different level of perspective, with balance, through the different pranayama chakra. And of course, lastly, the Ardhanarishwara, explanation. So I'm just going to go over the questions now. I'm putting a stop to my own questions. Otherwise, everybody's going to get really upset with me. So I'm just going from the bottom. I think Manju has a question. How do we know which side of our 4951 should tilt towards? Surely each of us has a natural preference.
Yes, we have a natural preference. But what I like to say is, if you are going to live in this world, it is better it is 51 on the left brain so that you can survive in this dog-eat-dog world and rat race and still remain a human being. So I would say 51 on the left, 49 on the right would help you to maintain balance while living in the world. Now, if you can live in a forest or in a cave, you could even be 80 in your right brain with just 20 in the left. But I would say 51 left, 49 right is sort of my preferred position here.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to move to the next one. Sorry, I'm going to rush you through this. So except human beings, this is from Mr. Soundarajan, sir, all other living beings are naturally established in balance. What do you have to say to that?
See, it is because the other beings are just being themselves. A cat is just being a cat, a dog is just being a dog. But we human beings, we forget we have to be a human being, and we have become human doings. And because of that, we have started being human. And once we start to be human, we will automatically be balanced.
Very well said. So there's a wonderful question again here from Radhika, who says, is chakra beej mantra chanting helpful at cellular level, or is it beneficial in cancer patients?
I would say both. You see, the bija mantra is the seed. So it is going to have effect at all levels: physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual, and who knows, maybe even financial. So it will have benefit at all levels. Now, you have asked a question in cancer patients. I would say yes, because any chanting is going to help in cancer patients for sure. And bija mantras are going to help them focus inwardly. So definitely yes, but not just bija. There are many things people can do who have cancer. Deep breathing, mantra chanting in general, bhajans are very, very calming and soothing. The pranayamas are very useful. Depending on the type of cancer, stage of cancer, the therapy will vary. But yes, bija mantras are useful for healthy people to maintain health and for unhealthy people to regain health. Yes.
Wonderful. So I think, cancer and yoga and, yoga therapy is another conversation for another day. So we'll leave it at this. And there's my cousin Prakash who says, Anandji, kindly enlighten on the koshas and how does breathing slowly when inhaling and exhaling, how does that help? I guess because you're talking about Raga Dvesha and all that, right?
Yes. You see, the koshas, you have the physical, the Annamaya, you have the physiological Pranamaya, and Manomaya, which is the mind body. It is the psychological part. Then you have the intellectual, choice-based, discerning part of you, and you have the cosmic part of you. Now the cosmic part and the discerning part, which are called Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya, are a bit more universal. But Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya are very individualistic. It is my body is functioning, my mind. It is sort of very individualistic. And the breathing is the Pranamaya Kosha. And so the Pranamaya Kosha lies between the Annamaya and the Manomaya. So the body and mind are brought together by the breath that is in the Pranamaya Kosha. So breathing is very, very essential to regain the harmony that has been lost between mind and body. So mind-body disharmony, which is called psychosomatic disharmony, can be rectified by proper breathing, because when you breathe, your mind and body have to come together, and automatically you become an integrated being, where the body, the way the body functions and the way the mind moves through that body are all integrated in a healthy state.
And the next question is by Mr. C. Ramnathan. He says, how yogic practices such as Surya Namaskar, Pranayama bring balance to our body, mind, and soul? Maybe we can just talk about the Surya Namaskar, because I think we've talked a lot about Pranayama.
Yeah. Surya Namaskar is a very useful practice. And there's a lot of debate whether it's part of yoga or not. When done mindfully, when done slowly, when done in the morning facing the rising sun, it definitely is yogic. When done late night in a glass-walled yoga studio, air-conditioned on 55th floor of Empire State Building, it is exercise. Okay, so Surya Namaskar itself changes depending on how it is done, where it is done, when it is done. But Surya Namaskar involves the body movement, the breathing, the mindfulness, and if you start to work on the chakra awareness in the Surya Namaskar, it becomes a holistic practice that is creating balance at all levels. You are bending forward, you are bending backward, you have positions standing up, you have positions lying down. And so because of that, the different body positions, the way the body moves in a smooth manner, synchronized with the breathing done mindfully, and maybe with the mantras or the bija mantras for the Surya, automatically it creates a beautiful sense of psychosomatic harmony.
So I'm just skipping over some questions. I'm just going to Lakshmi, who is my cousin from Singapore, and she asks, do you think it's easier to get balance as we go older?
I would say yes. I would say that the human being, as we grow older, especially if we have been a bit mindful of our life. If you have been mindful of your life, and if in your life you have been learning lessons that life is teaching you, you will definitely be more balanced as you grow older. But if you are going to be headstrong and say, everybody in life is against me and I am correct, it's going to continue throughout your life. So I think if you are a good learner and you use life as a learning experience where everything helps you to learn, I think as you grow older, you will be more balanced for sure, because maturity comes in. Now, many people, they grow older and they are not mature because they are not mindful of their life. So I would say living a mindful life, as you grow older, you will definitely be more balanced. But otherwise, you can become more imbalanced.
Correct. So that is a very beautiful answer. So I just was seeing my cousin Prakash sharing a lot of, I think SPB's loss. So just going over that, Ignatius uncle, should the children be taught mindfulness just like reading and writing regularly? And he tells you, keep smiling, sir, as always. So somebody's noticing your smile.
I think our educational system focuses too much on learning facts and figures. We need to develop the perspective of the young children, and the perspective that life is a big lesson, and that everybody who comes into your life is coming to teach you a lesson. SPB has taught us a lesson. Be the best you that you can be. Make others happy. More than 40,000 songs in so many languages. Record of singing more than 20 songs in a day. What beautiful memories he's given people, that he is immortal because he lives on. Why? Because he was able to give. So I think this perspective that can I give of myself? And if somebody comes into my life who gives me a positive experience, may they become an example of what I need to be. If somebody comes into my life and gives me a negative experience, can they be a teacher teaching me what not to be? I think this is what we need to teach the young kids. There's nothing like a good teacher, a bad teacher. The good teacher teaches you what to be. The bad teacher teaches you what not to be. So ultimately, both of them have taught you something if you are willing to learn. If you can expand your perspective, your mindfulness. And if we can give that to the kids, we'll have a much better world, much better world.
Yeah, I always think also that, everything we have to see as a learning experience, good or bad. So, yeah, so I guess, Uncle Ignatius, the answer is yes, mindfulness is a good thing to introduce to children. So, there's some questions on losing weight and all that. So,
I
yeah,
think that's
so,
a separate conversation.
yeah, we should do another conversation.
All I would like to say is yoga is not a weight losing kit. That's not what yoga is about. Yoga is about losing your head weight, losing all your dead weight, so that you can be light and you can fly to the highest point you need to be. So it makes you lagatvam, we say, that is, you become very light. One of the benefits of yoga is said to be lightness, where the prana in you starts to make you float. So you may look heavy, but you are light and you are lifted by it. So yes, yoga helps in that, but to burn up calories, you need a bit more dynamic exercise for sure. And remember, what you put in stays in. So be careful what you put in.
So I get these questions all the time about weight loss and yoga. So that's really I guess weight loss is a huge topic in itself, because everybody is always trying to lose weight. So we'll do that another time.
It was one of my best-selling DVDs. In fact, Yoga for Weight Loss was one of my best-selling DVDs.
I'm not surprised at all. We have to do a conversation that's going to break records.
It was a best-selling thing. And I always laugh because I often get people. I got a young man meet me some time back and he said, Dr. Ananda, I want to start doing yoga. I said, very good. He said, but my family says I'm too thin to do yoga. They say yoga is only for those who want to lose weight. So now, one new misconception of yoga is it is to be done by people who want to lose weight. And if you are too thin, don't do it. And we did a research work on that, where people who are underweight came to normal weight with yoga. So yes, one future conversation on yoga and losing and gaining weight.
Yeah, so that's a big one. That's a really big one. And we have Rebecca says that, she's going to start caring for cancer patients. So she would like a conversation about that too. Yeah, so that would be great. But I think we're almost reaching, an hour and 10 minutes. So I think
for Rebecca, I would like to recommend the new book authored by Lee Majeski and myself on yoga therapy, where Lee Majeski, who is a cancer survivor herself, we have devised a program for, people who have gone through cancer treatment, how to get them back to a sense of being themselves. And one half of the book totally describes our program. Just go on to Amazon and you'll find it. Yoga therapy, a whole person approach to health. And we talk about non-communicable diseases, but we focus a lot on cancer. And the program that we devised at Kaivalya Dharma is described very vividly in that book. Highly recommended if you are going to start working on that.
Yeah. So thank you so much. That was really great information. And I think I'm going to close this conversation with your chant. A lot of people appreciate. I think a lot of one-liners have come up today. So Shanti says also the losing the head weight and stuff, she really appreciates. So yeah, so a lot of catchy lines that will go, it's going to stick in people's memories. And I really like Ammaji's line as well, down 99 times and, up 100 times. I think that's something that's going to stick with me. So with these beautiful words, I think we can end this session with your wonderful chant.
Yes. This chant is a chant that talks about wholesomeness, how everything is wholesome, everything is complete. There's nothing that is not complete. And we may not feel complete at times. We may feel very imperfect. We may feel incomplete. We may feel alone. But this chant gives us the hope that yes, we are part of a wholesome universe and we are a wholesome human being. So it's a very beautiful prayer. We'll end with that. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ananda. Thank you, all of you, for being here, for your wonderful questions. And I'm sure Dr. Ananda always takes the time to answer the questions that have not been answered. So you can just, look forward to a reply from him. So there's more work for him after the talk. So thank you all again. And until our next conversation, yeah, stay safe and stay home.